The Tom Woods Show, episode 718.
Prepare to set fire to the index card of allowable opinion. Your daily dose of liberty education starts here. The Tom Woods Show.
If you're a homeschooling parent and you're tired of running yourself ragged, then check out the self-taught Ron Paul curriculum. And check it out through my special link where you get 3 free bonuses totaling $160. My special link? RonPaulHomeschool.com. Hello and welcome to episode 718, which is a fun episode. I think you're really going to like this. This is actually my recent appearance on the Johnny Rocket Launchpad, where I was the guest for episode 100. You can follow and check out and listen to other episodes of the Johnny Rocket Launchpad at johnnyrocketlaunchpad.com. If you don't remember that, I'm linking to it at tomwoods.com/718. It's if you start listening, you may say, well, I've kind of heard Woods say some of these things before. That may be the case. But as it goes on, especially in that lightning round and stuff, it's a lot of new stuff that I think you'll enjoy. And it's just a great conversation, great people. I'll warn you, not this episode, but other episodes of the Johnny Rocket Launchpad, the language is sometimes, as they say, not suitable for work. And I know a lot of you wouldn't really care about that one way or the other, but I thought I should mention it. But great show, great people, a lot of fun. So I thought, hey, I think that'd make a good episode of this show. So I've taken out the part at the beginning where you get told about what a great guy I am. I took all that stuff out, and I just have him introducing me onto the show, Tom Woods, and then off we go. So fasten your seatbelt, enjoy.
I welcome on our 100th episode, the one and only Tom Woods!
Hey, everybody. Hey, thanks for having me.
Wow. I was seriously talking to everyone. I'm like, the best guest we could get would be Tom Woods. 100th episode. Perfect. Tom Woods is like, I listen to you every day, and I'm like, this would be the guy.
Right. Oh, that's very good of you to say. Thanks.
So thank you very much for joining us. And, I guess the first thing I want to ask you is, me being a frequent listener of your show, TomWoods.com, spreading the message of liberty, I think is really important. And you do it, I do it. We have different ways of doing it. You did it with the books, the publishing. What do we as libertarians have to do to get that message out there? And what are we not doing? And what are we doing right? And what are we doing wrong?
Oh, man. Gee, I've been talking about this actually on the show. Over the course of July, I spent a number of episodes on exactly this. On is it that we haven't written enough books on economics and that the next one will be the one? Exactly. And I say that, I've written a book on economics. I'm not disparaging that.
Right. It's good stuff.
Yeah, right. And once people get into the movement, then they do want to know everything there is to know. But the question is, what is that trigger that draws them in the first place? And it's not always the giant treatise, although everybody's got his own story. But I would say we've got to seize every single resource that's available to us. We live at a time that would have been unthinkable to people even half a century ago. When you think about it, we get really depressed and, everything's going to pot, so to speak, and everything is terrible. But compared to where we were in, let's say, 1951, where there really was nothing like a liberty movement. There was no end the Fed. There was no anti-imperial. There was nothing. There was the mainstream. There were 3 channels. There was a mainstream media. There were the mainstream political candidates, and that was it. And half the world was dominated by a system that believed in basically state ownership of the means of production. None of that exists anymore. We have a lot of problems, but all that stuff is gone. And in its place, we have millions of people who are willing to think differently. So that's great. But we got to keep that momentum going by using every avenue available to us. And I'll give you an example of how to do that. And it's going to sound a little self-serving because it has to do with a product that I'm involved in. Okay. But I'm involved in the product because it has these good features.
Okay.
I've created a number of courses for the high school level of the Ron Paul homeschool curriculum. And one of the merits of that program is that not only does it teach you, history, economics, and, not the sciences and all that in ways that we would have killed for as kids, but also it teaches people, young people, how to start and build up a YouTube channel, how to start and build up a blog, how to write effective advertising copy, which is something, if you have that skill, you will never starve. You will always find work. How to build your own small business, but also how to do public speaking effectively. These are things, nobody has these skills, especially kids at that age. I mean, who's going to teach them public speaking, blogging, YouTube? But if we get a lot of people who are young, who are full of ideas, who have learned stuff that they weren't getting in traditional school, and they can communicate it in effective and arresting ways, then I think things really begin to shift for us. Because it's true, everybody has access to the internet. So the bad guys can also make YouTube videos and so on and on. But the point is, the bad guys, they had the mainstream media 50 years ago. We weren't there at all. So things haven't really changed for them that much. Their ideas were everywhere. Well, their ideas are still all over the internet, but whereas we were 0 before, we're now up to 50, I would say now, or 60 or 70. And it's because we're figuring out there are free ways, don't cost you a thing, to get out there and spread your message. Why not do it?
I'm absolutely 100% behind you, because we have YouTube. By us spreading that message of liberty, we really want to change the culture and the way people think.
Right.
And I think it's so important that we kind of relate to people, and we can look at the arts and entertainment.
Exactly.
Music, I think, is a beautiful avenue of approach where we could get people involved in liberty. If, there's a couple rappers who are now so-called libertarians.
Yeah. Oh, Eric July is a full-blown libertarian.
Yeah.
Absolute Rothbardian through and through. That guy is awesome.
Nice.
This is the stuff we should be focusing in on, and in the entertainment. I mean, I remember you had a couple guests who was a director in a movie, and it was a libertarian movie, but you said, you can't make a movie about libertarianism, but you can make a movie and have libertarianism in it.
Yes. That's the key, because the problem is, because we're so outnumbered in the popular culture, we feel like, well, when we've got our chance, we got to grab it by making what? A libertarian movie. And the libertarian movie is always so ridiculously preachy that it turns off anybody with any sense of what a good movie is supposed to be. So we blow every up. Don't get me started on the Atlas Shrugged movies. What a disaster. Unwatchable.
Those were so bad.
I thought they were unwatchable. What would the average person have thought?
It's
in other words, I wanted to like them. I went in there wanting to like them. The average person just figures, well, I'm going to go have a night out. And that person was screwed out of a night out.
I know. Oh, my God. It was terrible.
Yeah, not good. So, it is possible. I mean, like, for instance, when you think about a lot of the propaganda movies that get made every year, where they're supposedly about some episode in history, and of course they totally butcher it. There's so many. I mean, in Amistad, there's a black man sitting in a courtroom in Connecticut in the 1820s. That would never have been allowed.
That's true.
Exactly.
No, in Connecticut, they're never going to allow a black man to sit there. But of course, that complicates things, because we all know the Northerners were all virtuous, and it's just so ridiculous. But yet, the point is, they make a lot of these are beautifully made movies. They're wonderful movies. They're well acted. They're well written, and that's how they get the point across. So, one of the things that I've tried to do is, in addition to talking about why the Fed stinks, is to bring on people who are doing this kind of work and who realize the limitations of what we've done so far. And I think, especially because the Ron Paul movement brought in a lot of young people. I mean, these people are still barely out of college, half of them. I think we don't even know yet what some of these folks are going to accomplish.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so Tom, to build on reaching everyday, normal, average Americans that love their football and all that.
Regular, everyday, normal guy. Nothing special about me, mother.
Me, myself, being 45 now and conservative, me coming from the left, is sort of a bad word. And sometimes libertarians throw that word out a lot. And I know you have talked about the word conservative a lot. Can you tell us, do you think that there's a different way to talk to it without using the word conservative that sometimes does have those negative connotations, especially to people coming from the left?
Well, I think it's a case of knowing who your audience is. And if I'm speaking to a group of progressives, I'm going to speak to them differently from how I would speak to a group of conservatives. And that's how Ron Paul did it too. And he did so without betraying his beliefs. He would just explain it in ways that were more likely to resonate with the particular audience he was talking to. So he could talk to evangelicals, and then he could talk to anti-war people. He could talk to all these different groups. So certainly conservative today is a term that I still feel like I'm a conservative in some ways, not politically, but in other ways I think of myself as I have 5 kids and we drive a minivan. What other word are you going to use for that, right? I got to be who I am. But at the same time, I don't want to be mistaken for Rick Santorum or Newt Gingrich or any of these people or the hucksters at the Heritage Foundation. I don't want to be mistaken for those people. So I totally understand to an extent you want to run away from that word. But if I'm talking to conservatives, the way I talk to them, first of all, if I'm talking to them, is to say, as conservatives, here are the things that you believe. You believe in absolute moral principles, and you believe in stability and prudence, and you believe in respect for tradition. And then I say, all right, here's where you've been led by your so-called conservative movement. Foreign policy is obvious. How much stability has that given you? How
exactly.
Where's the prudence in saying, well, we'll knock out that bad guy and then see what happens?
Exactly. Yeah.
What the heck is that, right? What conservative leader would have ever endorsed that? Or whatever it is, whether it George W. Bush saying, well, we'll have more federal control over education or whatever. I said, come on, that's not conservative. So these people are you've been snookered by people. Right. And basically I would say, look, the libertarian message does not say to you, you can't be a Christian, you can't believe in family. You do whatever you want. Right. As long as you don't punch anybody in the face, you can do what you want. We'll leave you alone. We're not going to give you everything you're asking for, but at least you'll get something. These jerks in the conservative movement haven't given you a thing. Year after year after year, they've given you nothing. Now, with progressives, I would speak differently, and I would say to them, look, I'm a refugee from the conservative movement, all right? And I think there's a lot of good in the conservative movement. There were smart people who believed in some good things, and I'll credit them for that. But in talking to progressives, well, in fact, I'll give you a real live example.
This is going to be great.
Well,
this is going to be great.
Let's see. When 2009 came along, I published my second most successful book out of my dozen or so, and this one is called Meltdown. It was about the financial crisis. And I was squarely blaming the Federal Reserve System. So I had a lot of speaking engagements from that, and one of them was at, heaven help me, the University of Colorado at Boulder. Now, can you believe I actually did not know that the reputation of the University of Colorado at Boulder was that they were really, really progressive? I didn't know anything about it till I got there. People said, you don't know? That's like not knowing that Harvard's a little bit on the left. Like, what's the matter?
So you're scrambling.
So I got there and I thought, what have I gotten myself into? I thought, well, thank goodness this event was weirdly scheduled for a Friday night. Nobody, it's just be the hardcore libertarians will show up. To the contrary, the auditorium was full and there were people standing in the aisles.
Oh, my God.
Right? Yeah. So when push comes to shove, the progressives don't even believe in the fire codes they impose on us, right? Nobody cares.
Exactly.
So then it was my turn to get up there and talk. And, look, I made some jokes about John McCain. All right, that was easy, right? Fish in a barrel.
Right.
But because I know some of these people got there thinking, we're going to hate this guy and we're going to love hating him.
Right, exactly.
As I explained and as I talked from in a way that I thought would resonate with progressives, I talked about the Federal Reserve and I talked about the way it kind of gins up the economy and gives us a fake prosperity. And then I said, look, under George W. Bush, we got what looked like prosperity, and on paper it looked like prosperity, and the value of your house was going up, so you felt like you were getting rich, but there was something phony about it. And that was, to speak of it that way, a lot of these people would think, yeah, I think a lot of this Republican prosperity is phony. It just looks like prosperity. Right. But then I reminded them that this policy was totally bipartisan, and the whole Federal Reserve is totally bipartisan. And I reminded them that the progressives in the old days, their view was question authority. You don't just say, well, this institution's been around for a while. I bet it's got our interests at heart. No. And right. Moreover, when a bunch of bankers get together in a deserted area and draw up legislation for a giant bank that will help out all the other ones, right. Is your first instinct, I'm sure they have the public welfare.
Right. Probably not.
I mean, I got them thinking in those ways. And I said, look at the wreckage. The wreckage here is the average family that looked at their paper gains and thought they were doing great. And now they're picking up the pieces. They don't know what just hit them. There's nothing progressive about that. And so I got them thinking in ways they'd never thought before. And so when the question session came around, they were not hostile. They weren't looking to rip my head off. They genuinely wanted to know more. I had people emailing me later actually saying, so what should I read now? Tell me what the books are and I'll go out and read them. So of course, how about the book Meltdown I was promoting at the thing?
Right.
But,
exactly. Exactly.
Nice.
Here's my book. It's really good. You'll love it.
And it's only 160 pages. You have no idea what books I could have recommended to you, poor souls.
You got off easy.
But anyway, so you see, and then I did a lot of progressive radio too, because they wanted to go out there and find out what was wrong, and they didn't really understand what was wrong either, and they were willing to listen, because at that point they felt like Paul Krugman never warned us this was happening, or he warned us, 4 years after he called for the very thing that caused the problem. I mean, he called for artificial stimulus to housing, and then later he said, I think there may be a housing bubble. Oh, you don't say, Paul. Where'd you come up with that idea? So they were actually, there was this window of opportunity where they had an open mind. Even the neocons had an open mind, and they were willing to listen to something about the Fed. So I thought about where they are and what type of arguments would resonate with them. And, I think I had people, even though I was aiming this book at the general public and maybe at right-wingers who wanted to just blame Chris Dodd or Barney Frank. Sure. I wanted to show them it's bipartisan, and don't forget the Fed. The neocons always forget about the Fed. But at the same time, I had people, not kidding you, I wasn't even aiming at these people, saying to me, I used to be a socialist, and then I read Meltdown. I can't get over that. To this day,
that's awesome.
I cannot get over it.
That's like a huge accomplishment. If you could change a socialist over into a libertarian.
Yeah, especially when I wasn't even I think if I had tried, I would have been less successful. I just wrote out the truth as I saw it, and I thought, let the chips fall where they may.
Nice. Hey, Tom, you expressed that you're not really happy with the Johnson Weld ticket. Do you think there was a better option to choose from in the pool of candidates down in Orlando?
Yeah, I mean, I understand that would be the follow-up question. If you're unhappy with Johnson, I mean, I've already explained, I've explained myself what I see wrong with them. It's not that they're not 100% libertarian. I get that a lot of times you're not going to get 100% libertarian.
Absolutely.
I just want somebody who's skilled at conveying the message. And I just find myself cringing when I listen to Gary Johnson.
Right.
I don't find myself standing up and cheering. And it's not it's people say maybe I must be some perfectionist or he's got to hold this or that view. It's that when they come at him with a hard question, he darn well better have an answer. Yeah,
totally.
And I just don't see that.
Yeah.
So in terms of who would have been the better option, well, I kind of felt like it just would have shown me that there was still some fight left in the Libertarian Party if they had gone for anybody but Johnson. It would have made me think, wow, there's still life in this thing yet. They see that there's something more important than, well, do we get a couple of million votes? Yeah, I mean, look, it would be great to get a couple of million votes. That's wonderful, and that can spread the message in certain ways. But if the message of the Libertarian Party is smoke pot and Donald Trump is a racist, that just doesn't inspire people.
Right.
Fair
It just
enough.
does.
It's a little deeper than that.
People are not going to quit their jobs and go campaign for this guy for 6 months on that. They're just not. So, I mean, look, if people are going to say, well, what we need, look, because basically what they're saying is, implicitly they're saying, look, the masses are not ready for full-blown libertarianism, so we got to ease them into it. The masses are more likely to be moved by dominating personalities like Donald Trump. They're not going to be ready for the Libertarian Party platform. Be that as it may, if that's the case, then wouldn't you therefore go for the strongest personality you have? And if that's the case, I think it would have been fun to watch John McAfee as the nominee.
Yeah, I agree.
He would have been a blast.
I think so, Tom. And the thing is, though, Ron Paul ran, and he didn't water down the message. That's what doesn't.
Didn't. And they gave him every opportunity. They were practically begging him to be mainstream. Like the Republicans, there are people saying, look, if you would just change your foreign policy, we'll support you. Or even I think some of the people around him were trying to water down his view on foreign policy. And then as soon as he would get on stage, it would be foreign policy, foreign policy, foreign policy, foreign policy. And then people would try to say, but, the economy. And he'd say, yep, you're right. We got to do all these things on the economy. But you know what? If we don't change the foreign policy, we're not going to fix the economy. It just didn't matter. And it's true. true. Yep. Could he have been more articulate? Sure. But in a way, it's not even a guarantee that that would have gotten him more votes, because what people liked about him was he was authentic and real and raw and unrehearsed, and it worked.
Yes,
it worked.
it did.
And it worked even better in 2012, and the momentum was growing, and there were all these young kids out there ready to embrace this. And then this year, the guy who was outspoken and take no prisoners and to heck with everybody was Bernie Sanders, unfortunately. And so a lot of that energy got dissipated.
Tom, we're in Seattle, and so we have our Key Arena here. It's a big stadium, and Bernie came here, and it was just ridiculous.
It was ridiculous.
Ridiculous. I mean, the entire city went to this arena. Seattle. I'm
Everyone
like,
supported him.
That doesn't surprise
crazy.
me. It doesn't surprise me. But it's just, I'm just blown away at the fact that these people believe that more government is better for them. And it blows my mind that this is ultimately what Bernie wants. It's to grow government and to redistribute wealth. This is scary stuff, and it's infiltrating everything, especially in the Northwest.
Yeah, totally. And yet when they ask him point blank on Univision just a week or so ago, what do you have to say about what happened in Venezuela, where they took your views and they darn well implemented them,
Right.
and now it's total insanity and people are starving and there's no food and what's going. And he refused to comment. Like he didn't even say, well, look, that's not a fair comparison because I'm not calling for. I mean, if it had been something like that, if somebody had mistaken my views, if somebody said, hey, I thought the free market worked and look at how terrible Greece is doing, I would have spoken up and said,
Come
well,
on. Yeah, exactly.
that's not even close to what I favor. This
Right.
guy says I have no comment. That's weird. That's disturbing. Let me plug one thing that I did on Bernie Sanders.
I'd love to hear this.
I put out a free ebook called Bernie Sanders is Wrong. Just very straightforward. I thought, what's the most straightforward title for this ebook that I'm giving away for nothing? So I called it Bernie Sanders is Wrong.
That's
And I
pretty
took
straightforward.
on all the basic issues that he's on about. And I did a chapter on each one of them. And I bought the domain bernieiswrong.com, which is where you get this for free. I can't believe that was available. I bought that baby for like $10. And it doesn't cost you a thing. bernieiswrong.com. It's fun to read. Doesn't take that long. But it's a real book-length book. It's not like, half the time I hate when people give away these free ebooks and I get all excited and I download them. And it's a triple-spaced, 28-point, Arial font. That's the free ebook. This is an actual book, folks. I'm giving it away for nothing.
Right
So
on.
that's my
That's
answer
awesome.
on Bernie Sanders.
That is awesome. BernieIsWrong.com.
Yeah.
And
is
that's ebook is still available?
Oh, you betcha.
Oh,
Until
fantastic.
the end of time. That thing.
I love it.
And there's
As
no
long as-
overhead.
Exactly. As long as my heirs remember to renew that domain, it's going to be there.
Right
So in
on.
the year 4708, somebody's going to be looking at history and say, boy, there was some jerk running for president, and they'll Google it. Doggone it, they'll find that
Bernie
thing.
Sanders is wrong.
Nice.
What I want to know, Tom, is, we were talking about Ron Paul and the movement, and he did reach young people. My issue, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, in 2012, he was running as a Republican. Do you think that he would have made bigger strides for the liberty movement if he would have run as a libertarian? Do you think that he just blocked certain people from even taking notice of him because he ran as a Republican?
Well, are you also, is part of your question that should he have run as a libertarian after he finished his race in the Republican Party? Or are you saying that being a Republican in the first place was the problem?
Either or, because I kind of take issue with both.
Okay. Well, the fact is the Republican Party has a huge existing infrastructure. There's no getting around that. And, at the local level, at the state level, at the national level, they're there. They're entrenched for better or worse.
Right.
Secondly, there are a lot of people who, if Ron had gotten the nomination, there are a lot of people who it does not matter who the Republican nominee is. They're going to vote for that person because of the R next to his name. So if the Republican Party gave me the nomination, I would accept it.
Okay.
Because I would say, you guys spent all this time building up this party and you're going to let me use it?
Give me the keys to the car?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, if you say so. So, I mean, I understand why he did that. But at the same time, if you talk to him about, hey, we got to build up the Republican Party, he'll say, I don't frankly care that much about the Republican Party. I really don't. It's an avenue that I used because it was there and it gave me a platform. And the fact is, how he got the recognition he did because he was on that debate stage saying things that were different from everybody else. And he got the chance to stare down Rudy Giuliani. He wouldn't have got that chance otherwise. He did run as a libertarian in 1988, and very few people remember that. So my view is just do what works. Hold your nose if you have to. Do what works. I'm kind of more and more interested in the Libertarian Party these days, especially after being at the convention. That just my presence at the convention kind of piqued my interest in the party. So I am more interested in it now than I used to be. But my view was I want him to have the biggest audience he can possibly get. And also, I like that he's a Republican, because if he was a Libertarian, they could write him off and say, well, he's some weirdo. Don't you know all respectable people are in the two parties? But
That's true. Yeah.
here he was, this multi-term congressman who delivered, thousands of babies and married for 50 years. And it's hard to pass him off, to dismiss him as some hippie, weirdo.
Yes.
It was hard to do that. So my view is, if they're, it's not to say that they're going to ever play fair or that they're good people, but they've got this infrastructure. And I would say, if you've got that opportunity, then use it. Now, I don't know what the deal was with, once he runs and is unsuccessful as a Republican, I think there's in some states some sore loser law that means you're not allowed to be on the ballot.
Right.
Or that office and any other party, something like that. So I'm not even sure that was doable.
Anyways, though, this is Johnny Rocket, always launching ideas in your direction. Guys, episode 100. And who are we talking to? The one and only Tom Woods! Yeah! Explosion. Rockets.
Before you do Rocket Fire,
Yeah.
I would just like to say that not only is it astounding that we have made 100 episodes,
Yes.
but to all those naysayers, Johnny and I are still together. So
Yes.
Yes.
Heather and I
Guys.
have been together now for 3 years.
Wow.
Just over 3 years.
Congrats.
So, yeah, it's been fun.
Do you guys mind if I jump in for a minute?
I would love you
please,
to.
please.
I want to reveal the secret of the Johnny Rocket Launchpad. And the secret is that the best material is when we're off the air. I'll just say that. In between segments, that's where the good stuff is. You should
That's
charge
where-
for that.
That's where the dancing girls come out. Where,
Well, I think it is. I think it's just weird when you hit that on air button. Everything kind of closes down. You're like, okay, I have questions.
Yeah, I have to be Mr. Serious Radio Man.
Right,
I gotta be
Yeah,
serious. Yeah, so I gotta be serious. But you know what? I loved our conversation. We were talking about Steely Dan and how much
Donald
Mr.
Fagen is a woman beater?
No, we were talking about how that is out of line.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, she deserved it.
Yeah.
I was just
All right,
for the sake
okay,
of my
okay.
listeners, I wasn't saying that.
Tom Woods did not say
Tom
this.
did not say that.
No.
I was just
Actually, Heather
reporting
said
on the
that.
fact.
That's right. We'll have to counter black eyes, see how many times she was told.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Tom Woods here on the show. You can check him out at tomwoods.com. And you can also check him out at libertyclassroom.com. And what's the Bernie Sanders one? Bernie Sanders is wrong.
It's just Bernie is wrong.
BernieIsWrong.com. Anyways, so what we do here on the second segment, it's called Rocket Fire. And what we do on Rocket Fire, sir, is I'm going to ask you a series of 10 questions. These questions will be politically related. And if you can answer these questions between 30 to 60 seconds, that'd be awesome. Mr. Woods, are you ready to play Rocket Fire?
Oh, you betcha, my friend.
Question 1.
Do you think the general population is finally figuring out that war is a mistake?
More people are figuring it out, but all you have to do is fly on an American airline, any airline in the U.S., and you see there's still this unbelievable reverence for the military. So it makes you think, well, maybe it's just people I know who are having second thoughts about the military. But look, on my show the other day, I had the guy who was the media director for the Committee for the Liberation of Iraq, and of course, liberation means being invaded by the U.S.
Right.
And he has converted to Ron Paul non-intervention. He's a daily listener of the Tom Woods Show. So look, I think things are happening. Little by little, yes, they are happening.
I agree, and I heard that episode.
Question 2.
Do we as libertarians appear to be calloused to cultural arguments and rely too much on market solutions?
Okay, for this one, I'm going to cheat a little and ask for a clarification of the question. Can you ask it another way?
Do we seem like jerks by saying that free markets are the way to solve the problem?
I see. Probably to some people, because free markets are impersonal.
Right.
In the free market, I don't know the people in New Guinea or in Australia
Right.
who are going to benefit from what I'm doing. I don't know them personally, but I know from theory and practice that a lot of things we do have ripple effects all over the world. So yeah, that is a bit of a problem, but that's why you make documentaries and you show flesh and blood examples of here's a great entrepreneur and here's who was helped by what this person did and all these sorts sorts of ways of handling that, I think, would be helpful for us to do more of.
Right on.
Question 3.
When was the last time you changed your mind on a major political or philosophical issue, and what was it?
Wow. I'm probably going to give the wrong answer on this because I know there have been things I've changed my mind on. I know there have been, and I'm just drawing a blank on them. I would say the key one was I was an interventionist in foreign policy. Big time.
Wow.
And I changed that basically by reading the Rothbardians and by reading the non-interventionist right-wingers, people like Chronicles Magazine. And that really made me rethink things. But, I'm sorry, I'm slightly copping out. That's only because my brain is mush after this move across the country. Yeah.
How is Florida, by the way?
Well, it has its pros and cons, but the particular place where we live, which I'm not going to disclose, is we live in an undisclosed location.
Somewhere in the state.
Exactly. Has everything we need, and it is it's just such a relief. The where we're living we're extremely pleased with it. I'll just say that.
Oh, right on.
I'm very disappointed I can't stalk him.
Question 4.
How do you think people process political information?
Well, I think they process it generally through, a lot of them do, through a pre-existing lens. So they hear about Hillary Clinton's emails, and if you're a Democrat, by and large, you say, oh, this is a witch hunt, and you're a Republican, you say, oh, she's a threat to humanity. And then you just change her name to some other name, and suddenly people's opinions about the matter differ. So this has been, what's been nice about what's been going on with Hillary is that the Bernie Sanders people are pretty upset that they're, that she's not going to be punished in any way. But unfortunately, yeah, then that is something that is helpful for people to break out of. And if the Libertarian Party can get enough attention that at least people realize it's possible to think without having a D or an R next to a person's name, that in itself is a contribution.
Question 5.
If you could be successful in another profession, what would you choose?
Oh, geez. I guess it would be... Oh, that's crazy. That's a crazy question. It's okay. I'm going to give a dumb answer and the fantasy answer. The dumb answer is I'd like to be I'm not an economist. All my degrees are in history, and I wish I had studied economics more. I mean, I've learned it all. I've been self-taught in all of it, and I really wish I could be in that field actually with a PhD and really doing cutting-edge stuff in that, because that really holds more interest for me these days than history does. The fantasy thing would be I so enjoy progressive rock that part of me wishes I could make music, that I could be a musician. Because then I think I would enjoy it even more. But that makes no sense because I have no musical ability or background at all. So that's just when I'm asleep, maybe I dream that would happen.
Well, Tom, you could talk to Kurt. He will make you sound good.
That's what I do for a living.
That's what he does for a living.
I polish turds for a living.
Nice. Okay.
Not that you're a turd.
No, certainly not. Certainly.
I'll write that down.
Question 6.
What government agencies would you eliminate if you had to get rid of only 3, and why those 3?
Okay, let's see. I would say the IRS, the Federal Reserve, and I would say the Department of Education. IRS because it's the lifeblood of the federal government, and it involves invasions of privacy and misery and confiscation, and it's terrible. Second, the Fed, so that once they lose the IRS, they can't just print all the money. Take that away.
Right.
That would reduce them. Department of Education is pretty minor, but it would send a message that no more indoctrination of your kids by the people who used to take your money and print the money. That's not going to happen anymore.
Nice.
Yeah.
Great answer.
Question 7.
This is kind of a tough one. Could you tell us about a time when your ethics were challenged?
Well, I know there were better ones. But my first major book, the one that actually was purchased by people, was called The Politically Incorrect Guide to American History. And I was still basically unknown. And so I didn't have much leverage with the publisher when they started demanding. Now, look, I love these people. I don't want to put them in a bad light. They've been wonderful to me.
Right.
But they said, look, our audience needs certain points of view expressed in this book. And they were really requiring that I say certain things, particularly about foreign policy, that I just didn't believe in. And I knew this book was going to sell like crazy, and I knew it was going to make a name for me, and I knew I would do well financially from it.
Right.
And so a part of me thought, I better just shut up and do what they say, and I'll explain away all these bad parts. But instead, I said to them, I just can't do that. And if that means I'm off the project, then that has to be the way it is. And they blinked instead of me.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yes. Fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great story.
Question 8.
How do you avoid an inappropriate interview question?
Like this one.
That one.
Let's see. Who was I talking to recently? I don't think he said this on the air, so I can't say the name. But somebody went on, a friend of mine went on to be interviewed, and he said, "Hey, this is the subject of the interview." And then the person started asking him about some personal stuff that he didn't want to discuss on the air, and it was not supposed to be what the interview was about.
Right.
So when the guy, on the radio, your biggest enemy is dead air.
Oh, yeah.
right.
Oh,
You
yeah.
gotta be having talk all the time. So when they asked him about this, he went silent, and the host scrambled. Okay, let's talk about that. And
Right.
So I think if that were to happen to me, I think I would do that. I mean, generally, I'll just answer almost anything. But if it ever came to that, I would try the old silent treatment.
Right
Right on. It's like, I don't know.
Question 9.
What do you think of the Tea Party?
Well, it's turned out to be kind of a bust and a bit of a disappointment. There was a lot of promise initially, but you could all see where this was going. It was going to be co-opted by DC people who want to build a mailing list and then suck money out of these people.
Exactly.
And that's what happened in a lot of cases. And then the Tea Party, look, they were good. I don't want people denying that. They voted people out over TARP. I mean, that was hardcore stuff. But then they were willing to throw everything away for, a pittance. They
Right.
betrayed themselves a lot of times. But the fact is they were willing to listen on the Fed. They were willing to listen on nullification. That's way out of the mainstream stuff, and that's more than I can say for the rest of the conservative movement.
Right on.
Question 10.
Do you think people's political views change over time? And if so, why do they change?
I think sometimes they change. Yes, I don't know what the percentage is, but certainly they do.
We can make up numbers.
Yeah, we'll make up some.
30%.
28.3% of them change their
Sure.
over time. But it's almost certainly because of life experience. It's not generally because they read books on political philosophy. It's because of life experience. They say, does the world correspond to what my sociology professor told me? And they find out that the reality across a wide array of topics is vastly different from what they were told, and they adjust their views accordingly. Because who are you going to believe? Your sociology professor or your own eyes?
And the bonus question for the 100th episode. People sometimes say if you don't vote, you have no right to complain about government. What do you think, sir?
Oh, that is so crazy. Then if you do vote, they say, well, when you voted, you agreed to abide by the rules of the system. So wait a minute. So if I don't vote, I have to abide by it. If I do vote, I have to abide by it. Well, this is a nice little trick they have going here. What kind of a scam is that? So,
Right.
No, I mean, look, if I were in a concentration camp and I voted to say, you know what, I'd like to be released from the camp, that doesn't mean I consented to the system. It just means I was trying to improve my condition. But also, if I refused to vote on grounds of conscience, that I don't want to participate in a sham election held by a concentration camp guard, would you really say, well, you have no right to complain now? Come on.
Great answer.
That's Rocket Fire with Tom Woods! Yeah! Awesome stuff. Okay, Tom, I got a question for you. This is really quick. This is going to be a good
I got to go take a nap. Before I could be on Johnny Rocket again, I got to sleep for about 12 hours.
We're moving. You have a lot of children. You have 5 children.
Yeah.
And you want them to figure out liberty, but do you want them to figure it out by themselves, or do you want to steer them, or how do you find that happy medium? And how would you approach it?
Well, it reminds me of what it was like back when I used to be a college professor. I always felt in the classroom that it was not my role to propagandize the students, because I always resented when professors in my own education exploited their position to impose their views on me. I thought that was wrong.
Right.
So my view was, I'm going to tell you the stuff, but a lot of the times I would tell them things that they weren't going to learn anywhere else. I taught a lot about nullification, for example. Now that's just those are all facts. They're all verifiable, and I don't have to give them a position that it's right or wrong, but they know that it was a part of American history. So even just teaching history, if you teach it, if you include stuff that's normally left out, then you are conveying liberty without actually propagandizing them and telling them what to think. But they would ask me, I would say to them, look, it's not my role, and it's irresponsible when a professor does that. And they would say, yeah, we heard that and we understand and we appreciate that, but we still want to know your opinion.
Nice.
When they would ask, then I would give my opinion. I would give my opinion at that point. But then I would tell them, I want you to understand that you can get an A on a paper arguing the opposite of what I just said, as long as you have good evidence behind you and you formulate your arguments well. You do not have to repeat repeat what I just said. And any professor who flunks you because you don't is a disgrace to the profession and should be booted out of here.
Indeed.
And I knew there were people on that faculty who were rotten in that way. And so that was my way of getting back at them. So then when it comes to my own children, look, I have a greater responsibility to my own children than I do to students I'm never going to see again. At the same time, you're right. I don't want to sit them down, tell them absolutely, and say, this is the one way there is to think. I want them to discover a lot of stuff on their own. But at the same time, can you imagine the difference between students and children in terms of how often I would be asked, what is your opinion? My kids always want to know my opinion. And so when they ask, I give it to them. And my opinion, when I explain it to them, sounds pretty darn reasonable. Right. So, they are inclined. But I try to get them to figure out, because sometimes my 13-year-old, for example, she gets so excited about these issues that she'll just say she just can't understand how anyone could hold such and such view. And then I'll say, but you know what? For an exercise, why don't you try? Try and figure out.
That's a good point. That's a great point.
Why would somebody, even if they're mistaken, what would be their view? Why would they say that? And then we'll try and work on it together. But I mean, look, they're not all interested in it. I mean, they're young, basically.
Yeah.
But they respect where I'm coming from. They all seem to basically agree with what I'm saying. But I've told them that, look, I don't expect you to be a clone of me. And if you decide that you have a different point of view from me, that's not going to cause any problem here. You don't have to be a mini me. You can be you. But then they say, but you're right about everything. And I thought, well, that's very sweet. But as you get older, you might have a different view. You might have a different view.
Yeah.
And I want you to know that's not going to change a thing.
I mean, I think that's great, though. I mean, you say, why don't you look up the other side and then come back and then kind of figure it out? Because there's things that I didn't think of. When Heather and she'll be like, Johnny, what about the children? And I'll be like, I didn't even think about
the children.
So I have to recalculate it. I'm like, well, those are healthy debates. And that's what makes people grow, I think, intellectually and, maturity. What?
Yeah, and I want them to understand that if it were so easy, if everybody would already agree with me, I wouldn't have to write all these books. There are ideas on the other side that are provocative and that do seem appealing. I think they're only superficially appealing, but they at least have that level of appeal. So I at least want her to see where other people are coming from so that she can relate to them. Because I don't want her to grow up thinking that, well, we should have contempt for everybody because they're not smart enough to be libertarians. And my kids, I think they really aren't that way. They really, we've really raised them to be respectful of others, even while sticking to what they believe.
Mm-hmm. As it should be. That's great.
Yeah. 2004, your book, Politically Incorrect Guide to American History, came out. And there was one particular review that labeled you as racist. Now, did you...
Just one?
Did you experience any backlash from that? And to this day, especially with the politically correct campuses, do you still experience that? Have you ever been banned from a campus?
Oh, no, I wish. It just goes to show.
I love this guy. I love it.
I'm not working hard enough. They generally don't come out and protest me. I did one time, I think it was at DePaul, I was coming to speak. This was funny. DePaul's a Catholic university, and a Catholic student group was having Catholic Week. And I thought, isn't that illustrative of the state of the Catholic Church today? You have to have Catholic Week at a Catholic university.
Kind of redundant.
And even that, they're kind of going, well, I don't know, maybe. So I was coming to talk about something totally unrelated. I was talking about something having to do with, universities in the Middle Ages, some kind of scholarly topic. Well, there's a professor at DePaul who's a professional victimologist. And so he wrote an editorial for the student paper warning that Tom Woods was coming.
Awesome.
So then I wrote a response to the DePaul paper, and I said, just for fun, first of all, everything the guy says is total BS, and I'm going to prove it to you. But secondly, for fun, I'm going to link you to my record of publication, and let's compare it to the record of publication of your professor here. Now, here's the trick. You can't include letters to the editor among your publications. Let's see which one of us is making his institution prouder. Well, because this guy has basically written 2 articles and nothing else. So he had no books. He had no scholar. He had nothing. All he did was write victimological pieces. So I said, maybe he ought to spend a little more time. That tenure thing is coming up soon. So I basically just smacked the guy. Wow. And I was so ready for him to show up. But of course, he's a coward. He writes a letter to the editor, doesn't dare to show up because, boy, would I have had fun with that.
Yeah, that's great.
But
That'd been a fun one.
generally they leave me alone because I'm not. I'm well known in some libertarian circles. I'm not well known to progressives. I'm not Ann Coulter. I'm not Milo Yiannopoulos. So when my name comes up, people just overlook it, and nothing really comes of it, and that's fine. I mean, I'm happy with it being that way anyway. But in terms of it's right. I was called all kinds of names. There's nothing so-called racist in that book. You can't find anything. So the people saying it, they don't actually quote anything. They just count how many quotes of what I've said. People who call me a racist.
But this is what they do, though.
It's always, well, yeah, but he was in the bathroom once with some guy who knew a guy who belonged to some group. It's just crap like that. What are you talking about, right? What are you actually talking about? So, but
That's
the thing
great.
is,
That's
you
great.
get called that these days, and most people just know what that means. It means Jesse Jackson doesn't like you. It doesn't mean you're a bad guy or you hate people or whatever. And plus, the people who call other people racist for a living, these are about the most vile, hateful, disgusting people I've ever seen. These are not people who have nothing but brotherhood in their hearts. I mean, these are people who are seriously projecting. The idea that I would write a book and my secret intention would be, if I wanted to be racist, I'd just come out and do it. Just
That's
do it.
great.
Just say what you think and get it out there. I wouldn't be playing footsie. I would just say it.
Well, it's exactly. It's like the joke. If you know a liberal's losing an argument, he'll call you a racist. And if a libertarian's losing an argument, he'll call you a statist.
Yeah, I'll say, show me where I'm wrong. Show me where the facts are wrong. Don't call me a name or whatever. So yeah, I got some negative reviews, mostly from the major newspapers, New York Times, Boston Globe. They attacked that book. They hated the fact that it was a New York Times bestseller, stayed there for 12 weeks, partly because of their stupid attacks. Don't they understand? If you tell America, don't you dare read this book, don't you know what
they
people
eat it up?
Didn't you learn the lessons of the BBC in the 1960s? They're going to ban I Am the Walrus.
Yep.
So everybody wants to listen to I Am the Walrus.
Yep.
That's
good.
That's selling some books for you, man.
Yeah. So it didn't matter to me. And I got praised by a lot of people, too, who were prominent. That was fine. But, it didn't hurt me in any way. It only helped.
Well, good.
Tom, I got one more question just to wrap this up. And by the way, this has been just tremendous.
What a
episode.
blast, man.
Tremendous.
Yeah, thanks.
What got you into Austrian economics? You came from a history background. What was
you said when we were off the air that you loved the stories. This one's a story that you'll like because it shows how things can backfire on people.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
I used to read National Review magazine. We all know National Review, founded by Bill Buckley back in the mid-'50s, and it's still around.
Yeah.
And, in those days, in the early days, even Murray Rothbard wrote for it. Ludwig von Mises wrote for it. As time went on, they became less friendly with Rothbard, we'll put it that way. And they became less friendly with libertarians and whatever. But for a while, it was kind of a big tent, and a lot of people wrote for it. Well, these days, not so much. But in the late 80s, I was in high school. Early 90s, I was in college. I subscribed to it. And I loved reading it because I was a conservative. That was all I knew. I knew I wasn't a leftist, so I know I must be a National Review guy. So I read the stuff, and I loved it.
A National Review.
You got to be one or the other.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, but then Buckley wrote his long essay that nobody read called In Search of Anti-Semitism, in which he said, Pat Buchanan is definitely an anti-Semite. Joe Sobran may not be, but he's obsessed with Israel, so he's suspect. And he went on this whole thing. And The Nation magazine, they're certainly anti-Semitic and whatever. Well, The Nation hit back hard against this. Buchanan, I don't remember if he even bothered at that point. I mean, it was just obviously Buckley signaling, hey, everybody, I know I'm conservative, but I'm also respectable and okay. Really, it was
Okay.
pathetic. It was stupid. So a lot of people responded. So National Review ran a special insert where they excerpted from responses to Buckley's article. And one of the responses was from Murray Rothbard, who, of course, was Jewish. And Rothbard thought the whole thing was so patronizing to Jews and so pathetic. And he said that these people that he's accusing of anti-Semitism, he said, look, let's look at the reasons that are given. And Rothbard just smacked them all down. Rothbard was saying, look, National Review has basically been a terrible disaster for the cause of liberty from the beginning. And so he went down and talked about all the compromises that National Review had made over the years. And I thought, who is this Murray Rothbard who is more free market than National Review? Is there such a thing? And he's critical of Bill Buckley. Doesn't everybody love Bill Buckley? So immediately I wondered, who is this Murray Rothbard?
Okay, this is cool.
So you see, that wasn't what was supposed to happen. I was supposed to read that and say, this Murray Rothbard doesn't know his place. He's supposed to get in line because the Pope of conservatism has given his ex cathedra statement. And instead, he just hit back hard.
Wow.
So I thought, I got to find out who this guy is. Well, at the very same time, I happened to see an ad in a magazine for the week-long summer seminar hosted by the Mises Institute, where you're going to learn hardcore free market Austrian economics, and you're going to be taught by Murray Rothbard. And I looked, wait a minute, I'm going to be taught by what? By Murray Rothbard? This guy?
Wow.
Okay, yeah. I'm going to fill out the application, send me your materials. So they sent some Rothbard books, and I thought, oh, baby, I'm going to find out who this guy is. And I got done, and I thought, I am a convert. I don't give a crap about Buckley and his crummy magazine. I am with this guy, and I can't believe I never heard of him until National Review stupidly featured him in the magazine. I would never have known about him if National Review hadn't put him in there.
Wow.
Thinking that by putting ellipses in Rothbard's article, they would just make him look crazy. I thought, what are they keeping out of Rothbard's article? The whole thing was very fishy to me, but I had to know who it was who dared to stand up to Buckley and who was more free market than Buckley. And then once I read him and once I met him in person, I never looked back.
And when was this, Tom? What year?
This was 1993.
Wow.
Nice.
That's a great story.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, isn't it? Yeah.
That's fantastic. I mean, I just kind of stumbled upon libertarian. My story sucks. I read Henry Hazlitt. Oh, okay. That was my introduction in economics.
That's fine, though.
That's a great book, though.
Oh, it sure is. Yeah. And you know what's great? One thing a lot of people don't know about Hazlitt. Did you know he never went to college? He has only a high school diploma.
Really?
Interesting.
And yet, not only did he write economics in one lesson, but he wrote an extremely sophisticated line-by-line response to the general theory of John Maynard Keynes called The Failure of the New Economics. Really sophisticated. He did all this tremendous stuff. He wrote for Newsweek for many years. He wrote for the New York Times. And he did all this without a college degree. He was just self-taught and really smart.
Wow.
Well, there's hope for me yet with my GED.
Yeah, right.
Heather's smarter than everyone in this room.
Right.
My own father got his GED when he was in his 40s.
That's great.
And my father could run rings around almost any American voter in terms of how informed he was.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just because you have an education doesn't mean you're smarter.
Yeah. It's not
my gosh, yeah. I mean, I think about all the education you have to undo with a lot of
you
people.
are yes.
And let me tell you, one thing I love about, there's a guy I'm going to be seeing. Yeah, he teaches at the Mises Institute a lot. Roger Garrison from Auburn University.
Okay.
And Garrison says, in the old days as a professor, I used to have to show up in my classes, and I'd have to spend the first class or two refuting all the fallacies that had come into these kids' heads about economics. I'd have to refute them all before I could really get started teaching. He said, now things are so bad, I have to teach them the fallacies and then refute the fallacies. They're not even retaining the fallacies anymore these days.
But right now, my challenge is reading Human Action. I'm a good portion of the way through. It's dry. I mean, it's a good book. I really like it, but it sucks when I'm like, what does that word mean? And you're going to a dictionary.
Well, there is a companion book called Mises Made Easier.
Yes.
That is worth having. You might also think about, Bob Murphy just released a book called Choice, and it's about 300 pages, and that's basically his distillation of human action for classroom use. Because if you tried to assign that in a class, everybody would drop out. But if you assign Choice, people can actually read it. So I would, and by the way, I would read, if you're really interested in reading a really long book on Austrian economics, then I would do Rothbard's Man, Economy, and State first before doing that.
Before Human Action.
Before Human Action, yeah, it's easier to read. There aren't really the tangents that Mises will go on. All of a sudden Mises is discussing, the Industrial Revolution or Romanticism or whatever, and you think,
sure, look,
if I don't stay focused on this, I'm going to forget. I'm going to lose my train of thought here.
Where were we?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yes, and that's the thing. It's like, oh, this is epistemological approach, and I'm like, what does that word mean? I mean,
that stuff you can probably get away with reading later on.
I took the Mises boot camp. Heather and I did.
Oh, good.
And fantastic
That's good.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we're just like, we got to get schooled on this Austrian school stuff. And
Yeah.
and there's two different schools, though, as Walter Block had talked about, is that there is the Hayek kind of Austrian school, and then there's the Mises Rothbard
Yeah,
school.
and I fall into that camp. But, I mean, we acknowledge there are plenty of perfectly good contributions made by Austrians who are in other circles from us, and I've featured a bunch of them on my show. So, I'm trying to keep the lines of communication open with them and say, when you guys do a really neat thing or you release a great book, and, I want to have you come talk about it.
Right on. Anyways, this is Johnny Rocket here at the Johnny Rocket Launchpad. Give it up for Tom Woods! Tom, thank you very much for making our 100th episode so fantastic.
The pleasure was mine.
Do you have any websites? Websites, spew them
I
out.
do. Before I say that, I can say I've never been on a show like this, quite like this.
We're-
And
we're-
Is that
mean
a good
as
thing?
compliment. Yes, absolutely.
Yay!
Thank you. And by the way, there needs to be more lightning round style segments on other shows because that's the most fun. Those were hard lightning round questions though. But yeah, I really like that. The Key website, the one where my podcast is hosted. I've got over 700 episodes now. Every single weekday, I'm trying to help make you a smarter libertarian. Everything I do, the hub is tomwoods.com.
It's a fantastic website. I wanted to be a subscriber for $5 a month. Can you talk to us about that?
Oh, yeah. So when all you do all day is write books and produce content, and I produced 400 videos for the Ron Paul homeschool curriculum.
Wow.
I mean, all I do is work.
Crazy.
So
Awesome.
now I have all these products now. So if you donate, if you support my show, you don't just get some crummy PBS umbrella. I mean, I got so much stuff to give away. I got these Ron Paul courses. I got all this stuff. If you want to not just be a smart libertarian, but like a never lose a debate libertarian, I got a lot of that stuff. So yeah, at tomwoods.com, up at the top, it says support the show. If you support the show, you get all kinds of stuff. And one of the things, though, is my favorite thing is I didn't think people were going to think this was a big deal, but this was the thing that sold people. The
That's
private
awesome.
Facebook group. The private Facebook group where I interact with people and we have a community there, hundreds and hundreds of people, and people can bring an article and say, I really don't know how to answer this article. And within minutes, somebody's saying, well, here's what I would say. It's just fantastic. And they all like each other. We all get along great.
This
it's
is
just
cool.
a great refuge from insanity.
I think this is great. And you can find this, it's a subscriber program.
Yep, that's right. And you'll, stay with me for a month or stay with me for the rest of your life, but you get a ton of great benefit. I mean, it's more than you're paying for, basically.
I think this is great. And actually, we're going to do it as soon as we get off this interview with you.
Off the interwebs.
Off the interwebs. So, I mean, I think it's great. I really wanted to because we could have gone to the Seattle thing for $5 instead of
that's right,
$50.
Exactly, because occasionally when there's an event, I can say to people, if you're a supporting listener, you don't have to pay. So it was $50 in Seattle. If you're a supporting listener of the show, you don't have to pay. Or in Dallas, we had an event at the Mises Institute was having with a lunch for $85. My people didn't pay anything. So
That's awesome.
and that's not even listed among the benefits. So I'm making crap up as I go along and throwing it at people.
I love it.
Nice.
This is great. And you got BernieIsWrong.com.
Yeah, and if you get that book, it's for free, and it also hops you on my email list. If you hate email, don't get that ebook because I email people frequently. You're not supposed to do that, say the email marketing gurus, but my list likes it because I email them good stuff.
There you go.
Yeah. You get a good email, a juicy email from me. Yeah, so it's a lot of stuff. I mean, that's why if you're an adult and you feel like you got screwed in your education, you didn't learn what you should have learned, here's how you can learn it while you're in your car. But all of these different things we've been talking about, they all revolve around tomwoods.com.
Thank you very much. Give it up for Tom Woods! Yeah! Anyways, this is Johnny Rocket. We went into overtime, but that's okay because we're talking to the awesome Tom Woods.
The one and only.
The one and only, and this is our 100th episode. Thank you guys very much for supporting the show. Anyways, though, this is Johnny Rocket. See you next week. Always launching ideas in your direction.
All right, that'll do it for us for today. Tomorrow, should we abolish the FBI? Lots of fun. See you then.
Become a smarter libertarian in just 30 minutes a day. Visit TomWoods.com to subscribe to the show for free, and we'll see you next time.